Let's talk about polygamy. I'm just kidding. I think I'm done with that one. I'll wrap up just a couple little things on that, but this has been the most incredible few days. Cardio Miracle had a big conference. People from all over the country assembled, mostly in Midway, Utah, up by Heber City, Utah, at the Homestead and other locations. We saw the film Protocol 7. Many cows were there. So good to see so many of you. What a fantastic film. We'll figure out ways that you can access that, but it's a fantastic film. Recommend it for everyone. Do a little research, find things out, dig into things, folks. This is the time to study things out. The event culminated with Cardio Miracle being the VIP sponsor for the Tucker Carlson Glen Beck event that took place Saturday evening, which for me right now was last night, and got to meet Tucker, got to meet Glen, shake their hand, have a picture with them. But just so many other good people, like-minded people. You know, there's the famous, and, you know, it's always awkward. I never know how to act around people like that, but they're so kind and nice. Everybody was, and so like-minded. I'll be talking more about that event and some of the things that have come out. Highly recommend watching Tucker Carlson with Russell Brand, the British guy. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. In fact, I'll put the link to that in this video. You can also watch Glen and Tucker. That's uploaded now to YouTube on Tucker Carlson. So I want to thank John Hewlett and Janet Hewlett. I want to thank them for sponsoring such an amazing event. Going out on a limb, if you will, to do what they did. So yeah, Cardio Miracle sponsored the VIP portion of that great event. And it's a fantastic product. I highly recommend it. This nitric oxide, you can look it up, and Cardio Miracle is the best producer of nitric oxide. It gets oxygen into your blood, and that does so many things. And you can look at the research. The doctors that were at this conference that have studied this and know the benefit of nitric oxide and Cardio Miracle specifically. So it's just awesome. I'll put a link to that if you want to try it out for a discount with COWS, right? COWS, Community of Watchers, COWS. That's the thing, the discount code, and I'll put that in. Okay, now just to kind of wrap up everything I was talking about with polygamy. Now look, here's the only thing I really stated is that I do not believe Joseph Smith had consummated marriages. I'm going to try to clean up my talking here, other than with Emma. That's just what I believe, and that's what I feel. That's what I was taught my whole life. That's what I felt as a young missionary and as a mission president. I just have never felt that Joseph Smith participated that. To have women sealed to him, I have no issue with that. I think the evidence is pretty strong that way, but I don't believe the other. Now, does that immediately? So I was just smashed on this. I know, and I don't know why. Why would that just be the assumption then that I hate Brigham Young and think that the church went into apostasy with Brigham Young? I never said that. I love Brigham Young. I think that's the kind of prophet we needed at the time. To bring a group of saints across the plains and established Zion in a rough and tough valley that was Mexican territory. All these crazy things that happened. Brigham Young was the leader, and I talked very nicely about him. I don't understand what people think. Now, I think every prophet and or president of the church, however you want to word it, from Joseph Smith all the way to President Nelson, I think they've all come with their own likes and dislikes. And as soon as they get in charge, they're going to put their likes in place and probably do away with their dislikes. President Nelson's a perfect example of that. He'd been talking about the name of the church for years in talks. That's very well documented, that we should say the full name of the church. So what did he do when he became prophet? He did that. The previous prophet, President Monson, had put out a beautiful production called Meet the Mormons, right? Kind of similar to the very old version of Meet the Mormons that we had years ago. But this one was an updated one, a video called Meet the Mormons. So this prophet embraced it. And then just like that, the next prophet says, no, scriptures teach that the name of the church is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So at great cost, and we always have the great finger pointing in church. If you say LDS or Mormon or something like that, there's always, I don't know, half a dozen to maybe up to 20 people that will immediately correct you. So there's this good system in place that when a new prophet comes in, then there's this process of going along with their likes and dislikes. Gathering scattered Israel. That's been President Nelson's forceful message for years, way before he became prophet. So he brought that with him. So look, we can look at this a lot of different ways. We can say that the Lord from birth prepares men to be prophets. And so the exact timing is perfect. We heard that during the pandemic, the prophet was in place because he'd been a doctor. A lot of us heard that. I don't personally believe that was a good thing, because quite often it's by the weak and the simple that the Lord works through so he can manifest his power and glory, not using the profession of an individual to bring to pass now his work and glory. But okay, but if you take it that way, if you take it that the Lord raised him up from an infant, or any prophet, say any prophet, to become the prophet, and was there every step of the way, then you'd really have to say that about every bishop, stake president, Area 70, general authority, member of the 12, first presidency. You'd have to say that about every single one of them, because they're all connected, because a bishop has to be approved by the first presidency. And the stake presidency would be recommending the names of bishops and 70s and areas. So you have area 70s and then full-time 70s, first quorum of 70s. They're the ones that call the stake president. So, and they're there on assignment from the 12. So it would have to, every single person would have to be put in the exact position. And then you could go right down to elders quorum presidencies, relief society presidencies, because the bishop. So every single person would have to be raised as a child, as an infant, born into this world, foreordained and predestined to have a particular calling. Now, I just, for me personally, I don't believe that. I think the Lord qualifies whom he calls. And if you get a calling, you do your best to do it. Now, I think there's certain instances certain instances where, of course, Christ, okay, that is a particular instance where he was. I believe Joseph Smith. I believe all the prophets of dispensations had that unique situation. They were where they were supposed to be. They were born to a certain family. It was prophesied in their DNA, basically. But I really think that's reserved for the prophets of dispensations. And that's why they're the prophet of a certain dispensation. But beyond that, it's hard. Now, King David, Paul calls him a prophet, and he was anointed king. He had his issues for sure, but polygamy being one, right? But we can look at situations, but you can't. It's pretty hard to argue that. It's pretty hard to argue that if you're saying that a prophet, every prophet from Joseph Smith to from Joseph Smith to President Nelson and everybody in between, that their position was from infancy and everything they did was ordained of God and for a specific purpose of the growth of the church, or however you want to word that, then you'd have to say that every influence from that would have that same ordination, if you will, or dispensation. So, and that would trickle right down to nursery leader. And I don't mean it that way, like they're the bottom, but it's anybody. If you're a greeter at the door, you were destined to have that because you were called by the bishop, or you were called by a counselor who the bishop called to be his counselor, approved by the stake presidency and the high council. You see where I'm going with this. So I just don't think God, that seems to take away agency. So we come to callings, and I've mentioned many times, I've been bishop, stake president, mission president, and I came with what I came with, and I taught and did things the way I came. Now you could say, well, the Lord directed every aspect of that, and all your growing up and everything was just meant to be. Now look, I'm not saying that God doesn't intervene, and I'm not saying that we're not called to serve with certain people and do certain things. I'm not saying that. I think that is absolutely a possibility and happens quite often, but not every single thing. Okay, so Brigham Young, you can say Joseph Smith introduced polygamy, but let's say it wasn't really out in the forefront until Brigham Young. You know what? I don't have an explanation for it. I don't think Brigham Young did anything to disqualify him to have the keys of presidency of the church. I don't believe that. And I love many of the teachings, if not all the teachings of Brigham Young. He was just a rough and tumble guy that took it on, took on the responsibility. So that will offend a lot of people because it's interesting. Usually I find if I offend both sides about equally, then it's probably where I should be. So I'll offend those that hate Brigham Young and think he blew it with polygamy and Joseph Smith never participated in it and da-da-da-da-da. I'm not of that camp. I do agree. I don't think he participated in it. But I don't think Brigham Young's the bad guy. So I'll offend all those people that think Brigham Young's bad guy. I'll also offend those that think it all originated with Joseph Smith and that he actually participated in it, had sex with multiple women that were his wives and all that. And I just don't believe that. I don't believe that for a minute. So I'll offend all those who think I'm an apostate because I don't teach and believe that. And then because it couldn't have been Brigham, it had to come from Joseph, and then it was just seamless, right? Because nobody can do anything wrong in leadership. Nobody can come with their own prerogative, likes and dislikes, their prejudice, their whatever. Nobody can do that because they're raised for a specific reason. And okay, I'm repeating myself, so you kind of get what I'm going with that. Okay, now the last thing I wanted to talk about. So I think that's it now for polygamy. I hope. Okay. What I wanted to talk about is the scriptures on judging, right? I had a thought come into my mind, and we always think of not judging, and so we'll go to the scripture on judging, the main one, and it's in Matthew chapter 7. The King James Version says this: "Judge not, that ye be not judged, for with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged, and with the measure ye mete, ye shall be measured to you. It shall be measured to you again. Why, and why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considereth not the beam that is in thine own eye? Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, let me pull out the mote out of thine eye, and behold, a beam is in thine own eye?" So then we need to go to the Joseph Smith version, or we call it the inspired version, and listen to this carefully. This is really good. "Now these are the words which Jesus taught his disciples, that they should say unto the people, Judge not unrighteously, that ye be not judged, for judge righteous judgment." So we have two words there, unrighteously and righteous. "For with what judgment ye shall judge, ye shall be judged, and with what measure ye mete, it shall be measured to you again. And again ye shall say unto them, Why is it that thou beholdest the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but consider not the beam that is in thine own eye?" And I'm not going to read the rest, but it's really, really good. So we have these righteous judgment, and we're not to judge unrighteously. So I started looking up the word righteous. And we know in Christ's baptism, he was baptized to fulfill all righteousness. So I started thinking about judging righteously. And one of the names of Christ is righteous. So I got thinking, we always think of judging as that's judging our fellow man in whatever, they're doing, in a righteous judgment or an unrighteous judgment against them. So I thought maybe this has to do more with judging Christ or God. And then the secondary version of that would be our fellow man. So in other words, we judge God, he's going to judge us. And if we do a righteous judgment of God, then we'll have a righteous judgment back on us. If it's an unrighteous judgment of God, then we will be unrighteous. So I really think this is judging God is the number one meaning of this. And so I have a couple of scriptures I want to go through. I think Romans is one of the best. And so we'll turn to Romans. Acts, Romans. Okay, here we are. And we're going to go to Romans 3:25. This is really good. We're actually going to start in verse 21. But listen to this. But now the righteousness of God without the law is manifest, being witnessed by the law and the prophets. Now the law and the prophets is the Torah, and then the latter prophets in the Old Testament. So you have the 5 books of Moses is the law or the Torah, and then so when we hear the law and the prophets, that's what that is. Okay, and then it'd be the other prophets after the 5 books of Moses. Okay. Even the righteousness of God. So I'm in Romans 3, now I'm in verse 22. Even the righteousness of God, which is by faith of Jesus Christ, unto all and upon them that believe, for there is no difference. For all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Being justified, so here's this judging kind of thing. Being justified freely by his grace through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus, whom God hath set forth to be a propitiation through faith in his blood, to declare his righteousness for the remission of sins that are past through the forbearance of God. To declare, I say, at this time, his righteousness, that he might be just, and the justifier of him which believeth in Jesus. So we have justifying justice, we have righteousness referred to several times in those verses. So, judge not that ye be not judged. Judge not Christ, that ye be not judged. Now, judging can be in a positive way or in a negative way. So, it just depends on how you want to look at it. Now, and the situation here in chapter 4 of Romans, we have the word righteousness in verse 5, righteousness in verse 6, righteousness in verse 9, righteousness in verse 11. So all this and righteousness in verse 13, righteousness in verse 22. This is all in chapter 4 of Romans. So we really get a good understanding. Here's in verse 19 of chapter 5 of Romans. For as by one man's disobedience many were made sinners, so by the obedience of one shall many be made righteous. Wow, this is judgment. This is judgment. So it ties directly to Christ. Directly to Christ. So from now on, I'm not thinking only of not judging my fellow man in an unrighteous judgment. I'm thinking of not judging God in an unrighteous judgment. That's the bottom line. Or I am going to judge God righteously, and I'm going to judge my fellow man righteously. Okay? So then if we go to, and you know what? There are a lot of other scriptures. Let's see. Let's go to Doctrine and Covenants. I have a lot, but I'm trying to cut back on the video, the lengths, because I do get criticized for my rambling, and I think it's justified. But verse 26 in section 58, for behold, it is not meet that I should command in all things, for he that is compelled in all things, the same is a slothful and not a wise servant. Wherefore he receiveth no reward. Verily I say, men should be anxiously engaged in a good cause, and do many things of their own free will, and bring to pass much righteousness, or judgment, right? For the power is in them. wherein they are agents unto themselves, and inasmuch as men do good, they shall no wise lose their reward. But he that doeth not anything until he is commanded, and receiveth a commandment with doubtful heart, and keepeth it with slothfulness, the same is damned. Okay. Now this gets right into where I want to kind of finish up here. But this is the famous parable of the let's see, the Good Samaritan, right? The Samaritan, and it's right here. I'm sorry. So we have the parable of the 10 virgins, and okay, here we go. So I'll just start in verse 36. You guys know this. Naked and ye clothed me. I was sick and ye visited me. I was in prison and ye came unto me. Then shall the righteous answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee and hungered and fed thee, or thirsty and gave thee drink? When saw we, so this is the righteous asking him, when saw we thee a stranger and took thee in, or naked and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick or in prison and came unto thee? And the king, which I'll get into in just a minute, shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of these, the least of my brethren, you have done it unto me. Inasmuch as you have judged any of these, the least of my brethren, and righteously, because this is righteous, you have righteously judged me as the king. See? And then, on the contrary of that, here's the unrighteous judgment. If we go down, then shall he say unto them on the left hand, these are the bad guys. These are the goats. I never like it when it's the sheep and the goats, because I love goats. But let's just go. Okay, then he say unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungered, and ye gave me no meat. This is unrighteous judgment. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger, and ye took me not in, naked, and ye clothed me not, sick, and in prison, and ye visited me not. Then shall they also answer, saying unto him, Lord, when saw we thee a hungered and athirst, and a stranger, or naked, or sick, or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer them, he the king, saying, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye did it not unto one of these, the least of these, ye did it not to me. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. So this is what I'm going to do. You guys, you'll do whatever, but I'm going to think of when I'm passing judgment. Hopefully, I'm always passing a righteous judgment, but it's always to God first and His Son Jesus Christ, and second to my neighbor. That's the judge. You got to include both, in my opinion, not just our fellow men, because inasmuch as you've done it to them, you've done it unto God, and it's really God first. Okay. Now, the last part on this video that kind of ties into this is, in going through the Book of Mormon, I would say we started with prophets. Lehi, Nephi, okay? We started with prophets. And then we went to kings, King Mosiah, King Benjamin, King Mosiah. Then we went to judges, okay? And then, it kind of went, judges, kind of a combination of judges and prophets, if you will. And then just kind of all hell broke loose, and who really knows what kind of government, after the glorious period of, nearly 200 years of just peace and harmony after Christ's visit, we have prophets, mainly, Moroni or Mormon and Moroni, and I'm sure there are others. You have the three disciples that were hanging around for a while. But it just kind of went downhill. And with the children of Israel, you can go Adam, you can go Enoch. These are dispensational prophets. Noah, they're prophets. I wouldn't consider them kings. I wouldn't consider them judges necessarily, but prophets, right? And then we get to Abraham, still on that course. Of course, we have Isaac and Jacob, but to stick with the dispensational prophets, we get Moses. He's a prophet. I wouldn't say he's a king, or even a he could have been the presiding high priest, but not a king, but a prophet, right? And then we have Joshua, who is kind of this transitional. He's a prophet, but just different than Moses' prophet, right? So he's not a dispensational prophet. Moses was, and then you come to Christ. We'll talk about him in a minute. Well, then you start it back up again, and then after, let's say after the judges. So after Joshua, you have the judges, right? And then you get into the kings, and that goes all the way down until Zedekiah. See, I think he's the last king, and that's when the Babylonians come in and wipe out Israel. And then you have prophets after that, and there's no really kingdom anymore, but you have prophets, okay? And then Christ comes. So as a dispensational, and we'll get back to Christ here in a second. And then we have the restoration. So, we have the apostles. They're not kings. They're not political. And certainly would be considered prophets. But not judges, I don't think. Okay, so they're not political. And then you have the apostasy and all the things that led up to the restoration through Joseph Smith, a dispensational prophet, not a king, not a judge. And then, it comes to now. So I got thinking, we have prophets, we have presiding high priests, we have kings, and we have judges. Well, what's Christ? Our prophet, priest, and king, and a judge. Just some quick scriptures that we can go over. Jesus as a prophet. I can just give you the scriptures: Matthew 21:11, Luke 7:16, John 4:19, and there's many others. Okay, and then Jesus as a priest. You can go Hebrews 4, verse 10, 1 Timothy 2:5. I know there's more. Hebrews 4:14 through 16. Okay, this talks about him being the priest. Jesus is the King. Oh, there's so many. But Matthew 1:1, Revelation 22:16, Acts 13:22. These are all Jesus is King. Just Google, just check it out, right? Matthew 21:1 through 11, Jesus is King. Okay, and then Jesus is as a judge. Matthew 25. You can go 31 through 36, and verse 33 is really specific, and there's many others. So he's our prophet, priest, king, and judge, which is exactly the leadership types that we've had, and every one of them have had their issues. The only time it's going to work perfectly is when Christ is all of that, all of those titles. And I'm praying that that's going to be soon. I feel like it is. I feel like it's imminent. I really do. I think things are lining up. I don't look at time. I've mentioned that, the timelines. I've mentioned that so many times. But events specifically. A major war in Israel coming from the north. That is going to make it look like there's no hope, and we're going to have prophets in the streets, 2 candlesticks, 2 olive trees, 2 lampposts, who are going to witness. We're going to have a new temple in Jerusalem, but all these events could be very, very close and tied together and happen very quickly. If you check out the Temple Institute, they're all ready to rock and roll with the temple on the Temple Mount. The Gaza War was about the Temple Mount. It was about the red heifers because of that's tied to building a temple, the purification process of being able to build the temple. All these things are prophesied. Now, as far as other events, I think there's ways to look at them. I'm surprised I didn't get more feedback on the idea. I got some, and it was awesome, but of the revelation concerning the Civil War being tied to those verses in D&C 45 of, having to take up your arm against your neighbor unless you're willing to flee to Zion. And I really feel like one of the fulfillments of that has been fulfilled, and that was the Civil War. The saints fled to Zion, Salt Lake City, and surrounding areas, and totally missed out on a war that killed, if I'm remembering right, I think it was between 600,000 and 700,000 people killed in that mortal combat, hand-to-hand, cannons, bullets, but mostly, jabbity jab, stabbity stab, and just horrific. And it was literally brothers against brothers. So, and that's like I've talked about before, the fact that was fulfilled isn't a one and done necessarily, but it certainly could qualify as that. And those prophecies, section 45 and the section on that, I just lost it. I can't remember which section it is on the Civil War. They were within a year of each other, those prophecies. So I think they definitely have a place there. So with that, I think I had so many other scriptures about righteousness and everything, but you know what? It's all good. I think you get what I'm trying to convey here. God bless. I can't wait to talk more about the wonderful events of the last few days. Had an awesome stake conference today. Just new members of the church of a couple of years, an awesome family baptized in our stake. They spoke, and so good. So we been spiritually fed. We're making and keeping covenants. We're staying in the good ship Zion. We're acknowledging differences, respecting people's opinions, serving each other, and taking care of one another, and judging a righteous judgment on our God and His Son, our Savior. And hopefully they in turn will have a righteous judgment on us. God bless. We will talk to you very, very soon. Love you all. Bye-bye.